Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our February Thought Leader webinar. For everyone joining us live today, you may use the live chat feature below on the screen to ask questions throughout today's webinar. If you're joining us after the live session in a recorded webinar, feel free to ask questions in the comment section below, and our team will respond to you directly. For those who are new to our webinar series, my name is Betty Acker, and I'm with Stewardship Technology in our marketing department. My duties at Stewardship is to provide nonprofits and faith-based organizations with tools and resources to help them with their donor communities. Today, we have invited one of our nonprofit organizations, Second Wind Fund, to share their mission and fundraising basics with their experience with donation management. Our thought leader for today's webinar is Chris Weiss of Second Wind Fund. Second Wind Fund is a nonprofit organization focused on youth suicide prevention that is located in Denver, Colorado. Second Wind believes that every child and youth at risk for suicide should have access to mental health treatment as they need. They match children with youth licensed therapists in their communities, and we are very excited that they are joining us today as our fundraising leaders and sharing their expertise for today's Fundraising 101 webinar. This month, Stewardship has focused our mission on providing resources for fundraising and how your organization can increase your donor reach. And we have provided this through our suggested 10 fundraising tips. If you had missed this month's fundraising tips, I will be sending that resource along with a copy of today's webinar after today's presentation. At this time, I would like to introduce our thought leader speaker for today, Chris Weiss. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I was humbled by the request from Trey to do this because first and foremost, I will be very Socratic and tell you that I know absolutely nothing about fundraising. But I have been doing this for a few years and have seen some success with two agencies. The first being an organization called Urban Peak, which provides a variety of services to homeless youth in the Denver area. And then now I'm with one of the best organizations in the state, Second Wind Fund. And as BJ was saying, something that should be alarming to everybody, no matter where you are, suicide is the leading cause of death for youth in Colorado. And I like to give a pause after I say that. Your jaw should be on the floor saying, how is that possible? There are a variety of reasons for that, and we could do a whole nother webinar on that, but we're here to talk about fundraising. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we started in 2002 after a chain of 4 suicides at one high school. Our offices are in Denver, but we are currently in 30 counties across the state. There are 64 counties, but there are quite a few counties, particularly out east, where there are very few residents, but we are basically where the people are. And I believe we provide services to 96 or 97% of the population of Colorado. And to get more into what we do and why we do what we do, which is the important part, particularly when it comes to fundraising, is we believe that every youth in Colorado should have access to the mental health treatment that they need. And it's our mission to essentially decrease the incidence of suicide in children and youth by removing the financial and social barriers to treatment. That's our why. And our how is we essentially match children and youth with licensed therapists in their communities. And that can be in any one of those 30 counties. And particularly there has to be a financial or social barrier present. And then we will pay for up to 12 sessions of life-saving therapy from one of our 275 network providers on our therapist roster. The beauty of that is, and as many of you know, our healthcare system is crazy. And if you were to try and go get a therapy appointment or first appointment for your youth at risk of suicide or for your child or daughter, that can take up to 60 days to get their first appointment. And when we're talking about suicide prevention, that's completely unacceptable. And so our competitive advantage, if you will, is getting that youth into treatment within 24 to 48 hours, typically within 7 days. And that's where our competitive advantage comes in. And when we look at this page, as a fundraiser, our mission is to get this out to as many people as we can. That's it. You're just as much in logistics as you are fundraising. How do I get what I just read off to you to as many people as I can, 365 days a year? That's how I see fundraising. Getting your why and your how out to the community. The upper part of the history and how you started is much less important, if you ask me. Your focus should really be on the why and the how. If we go to the next slide, that'd be great. And to get into a little bit of our budget or revenue, if you will, for the fiscal year that finished on June 30th. And our fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th, which I love because, yes, we can take advantage of December, but we can also take advantage of June. Both two big months for us, and we do quite well in both of those months. So we kind of have two year-end campaigns that go on. Our revenue was $586,365 last year. So we're not huge. And so a lot of the advice or me talking about what we do, I don't know how applicable that's going to be to a university, if you will, with a multi-million-dollar budget and you've got the money to pay robocalls and all that jazz. This is small to medium-sized nonprofit. I'm doing all this myself. We have a mighty staff of 4. I'm a director of development that oversees a staff of 0. So if we go over what I did today, just this morning, I processed checks, I typed out and had our executive director do acknowledgement letters. I invoiced a $5,000 event sponsor. I set up a lunch with a donor. I spoke to all of our team members. And then unfortunately, I had to send a letter to a mom who just lost her son to suicide. And then I've got an evening this evening. So time is of the essence, and then I'm also doing this, which is it's awesome. It's my pleasure, but time is super important. And I also will say that 586 number was adjusted twice last year. As I mentioned in my first slide, the state of Colorado is going through a crisis with what to do about suicide, and unfortunately, our services are in incredible demand. So our fiscal year, we started with a $515,000 budget, and we ended up at 586. We're currently in a budget of 650. So we have more work to do this year, and it's not easy. But there's always more work to do, as you can see by my morning. But I'm super proud of our ability to serve the number of youth that we did last year, particularly when you look at it from who we served or how many we served the year before. So we went from 276 referrals, as we call them, up to 600. And that's a 117% increase. That is what fuels my fire, if you will. That keeps me passionate about fundraising for this mission. For every $1,000 I raise, that's another youth that we can serve. And I'm also super proud that our revenue has increased by 44% in the last 3 years. And I've only been here for, it'll be going into year 3 in April. So to go from that 408 to 586 just means that we're able to serve more youth at risk of suicide, which is unfortunate, but it's also awesome because our services save lives. If we go to the next slide, that'd be great. So at the heart of fundraising, those are the 6 categories. We do not have a social enterprise. So we do not rely on selling something to bring in funds. If we did, it'd be awesome. But unfortunately, we've been small for the last 15 years, and our budget has stayed in that $300,000 to $650,000 range. But when you look at the breakdown of revenue, this is beautiful. This is the idyllic fundraising situation. To have the majority of our money come from those top three categories is fantastic, particularly with individuals coming in at 29%, special events, which is essentially individuals getting together and attending events, and then foundations at the last 30%. The bottom category, government, I wish that was zero. To be fully transparent, I hate government funding. The most difficult grant that we have to do through the government is $1,000, and it requires 10 hoops to jump through, and I hate it. So I'd love to take that number to zero, but it is what it is. And our corporate line has always struggled, but I am focused on increasing individuals, increasing our revenue from events as well as foundations. And as we look at the chart below, this is a breakdown of the last 4 fiscal years. And as you can see, there's that awesome upward trajectory of reliance on individuals, a slight increase in special events, huge jump with foundations. And you're saying to yourself, how'd that happen? With our foundations, we switched from applying for general operation grants into more programmatic focused grants. And that really turned on the foundations that we were applying for. We also did a tremendous amount of research on who else we can apply to, and it's worked. And that corporate struggled. We struggle with corporate donors. And my theory is corporations are cautious about tying themselves to suicide prevention. That's just my personal opinion. But it is what it is. And I'd rather focus again on those 3 other categories. Communities like Kiwanis clubs, churches, Optimist clubs, Rotary clubs, any other miscellaneous community groups. And then as you can see, our government has increased, and we're applying for funding from particular counties that we serve. So Mesa County, for example, is on the opposite side of the state from Denver, on the western side. But we've seen a tremendous amount of demand for services out there. And so we approach Mesa County government, and they supply us with funding. So overall, I am super happy with those numbers. And if we could continue this, it'd be awesome. Again, it's just one of those things of we just need to build a bigger pie, not necessarily diversify our revenue stream anymore. If you go to the next slide. And this is a basic breakdown of some of the events that we do. And we need to run 3 of them. The last one is Colorado Gives Day. I'll get into that. But to look at the top one, an event that I've had a tremendous amount of success with at 2 organizations is a fundraising breakfast. And it's awesome because your supporters are doing a lot of the work for you. And I would recommend doing this event at a hotel. I am not getting paid by any particular hotel, but I love the Hyatt brand. They do a tremendous job with running events. You don't have to pay multiple vendors. You're not worrying about catering. You write one check to that hotel and they take care of everything, food, IT setup, all that jazz. But what it is it's a Benavon style model breakfast. And if you don't know what Benavon is, just type that into Google. It is a fundraising model, if you will. And one part of their model is an introductory event or a 1-hour breakfast. And you basically get people in a room. You have 5 or 6 speakers, and you're going to show a video, and then at the end, you're going to ask them for money. And crying is crucial. You have to make people cry, pull at their heartstrings, because that is when the checkbooks come out. And when we're working with something like suicide prevention, that's not hard. And how you do it simply is, let's just take your board members. Let's say you have a board of 10. You're going to ask each board member to invite 9 other people to a complimentary breakfast. Yes, as a nonprofit, you're going to pay for it up front. But all they're doing is accessing their network to invite 9 other guests to this free 1-hour breakfast. Not going to take more than an hour, you guarantee that. And you're going to show that, you're going to have the speakers talk, you're going to show the video, they're going to cry, they're going to write you a check, they're going to give you a credit card donation, they're going to give you some cash. And at the same time, they're going to provide you with their information, which is just as good as the cash that they just gave you. Because after this event, you're going to do some follow-up and get their reaction or their level of support when it comes to supporting the agency in the future. You're not going to get everybody saying, yes, I'd love to do it, I'll continue writing checks. But you are going to get some people who are going to say, I would love to be a table captain next year. And it's kind of, being fully transparent, it's kind of pyramid schemish, but when we're talking about supporting a nonprofit, it's all going to a good cause. Before I got here, they were doing a breakfast, and it brought in around $12,000. The year after I got here, we did a breakfast, and it brought in close to $45,000. So it's easy to make a 1-year jump and make a huge jump like that simply by asking for table captains. And again, it's super easy to start with your board because those are your main supporters theoretically. Then we do a golf tournament, and I'm very transparent. It's very standard. There's nothing crazy about it. There's nothing awesome about it. But it's a way for our supporters to get out there, have fun. We get some corporate sponsors in the door, and we bring in around 15,000. Nothing huge for us. Then comes our 18th annual walk run, which is how the organization actually started. So the high school went through the chain of 4 suicides. Community members got together and said, we need to raise money for the youth that are still in the school that can't afford therapy, that need it. And so they had a race around the neighborhood. Here we are 18 years later doing the same event. When I got here, it was wildly expensive, and they were paying close to $80,000 to bring in 100. And the way that I was trained in fundraising, that's completely unacceptable. I like to run by a system of you spend $1, you're going to raise 4. And that's how we are with our breakfast. Our golf tournament's at a 1-to-2 ratio, which we're struggling to raise more money for, but it is what it is. But then this last year, we were able to reduce the expenses for the walk run down to around $18,000, which is phenomenal, and I'm super happy with that. The less money you spend on events, the more money goes back to your services. And then comes Colorado Gives Day. A lot of people around the nation are familiar with Giving Tuesday. Colorado's wonky, and we do a giving day, a statewide giving day, like 2 weeks later. And it's huge for us. In a 24-hour period, we bring in $60,000. The year before I got here, they brought in, I want to say 15 or 13. And I immediately said that's completely unacceptable. There are tons of corporations and the Community First Foundation, who puts it on, doing a lot of the marketing work for you. So let's ride those coattails. And if you're across the United States, I would ride the coattails of Giving Tuesday as much as I could, because they're doing a lot of that marketing for you, all over social media and all that jazz. We crossed the threshold of 300 donors for the single day, which is awesome. And again, it brings in 60,000 in a 24-hour period. We do an event at a brewery. We do some Facebook Live videos. It's a way for people to really get excited about saving young lives from suicide, and it's a fun day. If you go to the next slide. And when I initially asked Trey from Stewardship to tell me more about what he wants to hear on this presentation, these are some of the things that he suggested. So when we talk about or ask the question, who are our donors? We are fortunate to rely heavily on individual donors, which in the fundraising game, to go back to the fundraising 101, in the fundraising game, the more individuals you can rely on, the better. Government funding's up and down, tons of hoops to jump through, a huge headache. Foundation giving is up and down as well. Oftentimes there's a, hey, we'll give to you this year, but we're not giving to you next year. Hey, we'll give to you for 3 years, but we're not going to give to you next year. So the more that you can rely on individual donors, the more sustainable you will be, because funding is awesome. Unsustainable funding is disastrous, because it's extremely difficult, particularly on the large end of things, to make up $60,000, $30,000 that next year. So rely heavily on individual donors. Unfortunately, many of them have directly experienced a suicide loss, or are close to a suicide loss. Ultimately, in fundraising as well, your goal is lifetime support from individuals, and that gets into sustainable funding. And unfortunately, those who have experienced a suicide loss, they will give to you for a long time. It's just a matter of keeping them informed on how you're spending their money, and reminding them that this mission is super important. How do we allow people to give? This is pretty standard. Mail in a cash or check, online giving through 2 ways. ColoradoGives.org, which is an awesome essentially a credit card processing company / foundation in Colorado that has super low processing rates. But that's who we process our credit cards through, and it's super easy for people to go on there, make monthly gifts, monthly recurring gifts, or make one-time donations, or make donations in memory or in honor of someone. They did not ask me to talk about stewardship technology, but I'm going to, and I would encourage you to talk to somebody from Stewardship. And again, they're not paying me to do this. They've got a whole platform that you can use. We are loving the text to give feature that they have. And we rolled it out at our breakfast last year. So as a fundraiser, one of my weapons at an event, a tabling event, a community event, is our text to give number. I do not need to hand you a pen. I don't need to give you our address to write out a check. All I'm doing is giving you our text to give number, and they do it all right in front of you on their cell phone. It's a great way to hold them accountable too, because a lot of people say, oh, I'll make a donation, but will they? But that text to give feature allows you to stand right in front of them and kind of guide them through that process. Super easy. You can donate your car. Colorado, we have Cars Helping Charities. People will donate their clunkers and we'll get a small amount of money. Great way to support us. Not a huge return on that, but it is what it is. We also have our Hope Builders Club, which I transitioned last year. Our Hope Builders Club used to be our monthly recurring giving club, which is when somebody sets up donations every month online and automatically charges their credit card. We still have that, but I changed the title of Hope Builders Club to the $1,000 and up. Why $1,000? Because that's how much it costs us to save a life. That pays for the 12 sessions of therapy and everything that they would need to get into those life-saving therapy sessions. Workplace giving, pretty standard. You're working, you take money out of your paycheck. Tons of companies will do that for you. You get a nice little monthly check. Planned giving, also people can give through their life insurance policies, insurance policy, all that jazz. How do we follow up? This is crucial. and this gets into my tips for success as well. Your thank you letter should be mailed within 24 to 48 hours of receiving that gift. They should make their gift and then be wowed by the speed in which they receive that letter. Because I think if you're taking their donation seriously, they're going to think about continuing to give to you, which again is the ultimate goal. If you take their gift seriously, they'll take their gift seriously. We do a thank you postcard for online gifts, which I highly encourage. Going to Vistaprint, printing off 1,000 of them, and make sure your logo is somewhere on there, because it's an opportunity for them to put that on their refrigerator, and then you have brand presence within their home or their office. Thank you call for higher gifts, just an opportunity to build relationships, which is also super important. Crucial to inform donors on how you are spending their money or gift. That's what's going to allow you to build that relationship and ensure a higher probability of lifetime support, right? And if I could go in, I'm looking at my watch here, got about 6 minutes left, but if we quickly go through my tips for success, again, I'm not a genius. I barely have a bachelor's degree. I do not have CFRE after my name, but I've never missed a budget. And this is how I essentially do it. Fundraising is a volume game, particularly when I'm the only one in this office. So you should be focused on how do I reach the most amount of people possible. So those community groups are sweet. Speaking in front of them is awesome. Kiwanis groups. Social media, social media, social media. If you're not on Facebook, you are losing. If you are not on Instagram, you are losing. If your board members aren't on social media, get them on social media. Even if they do not know how to work it, get them on social media. It's so easy to pay $50 for a sponsored post to get your message throughout the state than it is to pick up the phone and make those individual phone calls. And all it takes is 10, 15 bucks. And it works really well. Say thank you fast. They should be wowed by that thank you letter. Again, it's an opportunity for you or your executive director to write them a little note and start that relationship. Let the mission do the talking. And that's a nice way of saying there's a lot of ego in fundraising. But I am nothing without the mission. I would be a guy in a random office building doing all this. But the power of the mission allows me to do the work. I am simply a vehicle. That's it. Passion should be your fuel. You should be very passionate about that first why page. You should know your why. You should know your how. You should know your numbers. And passion should keep you going. Make an ask at every meeting. And it doesn't have to be financial, right? It's as simple as this. Talk about us. And that can be interpreted several ways. You never know the power of a social media like. You never know the power of a social media share. In this case, it could change the world. It could save a life. So make that ask at every meeting. Sometimes asking for money can be intimidating. I'll tell you what is not intimidating. Asking people to talk about us. It's free. It's a great way for them to get involved, to support the agency, and it's super easy. Lastly, program staff and development staff. I've seen experiences where this can be like oil and water. But if you can get them to be on your team, if you will, it is a secret fundraising weapon. Because the more you talk to your program staff, the more and better you'll be able to articulate your mission. I cannot tell you what it's like to take calls from concerned parents about their youth at risk for suicide. My program director can. And if she can share that story with me, I can share that with donors. I can put that into foundation requests, grant requests. We can incorporate that into events. We can put it on our website, and we're ultimately going to raise more money. So use program staff to your advantage. It's not going to work all the time, but if you can get them to feel like they're a part of fundraising, you're going to be better off in the end. I believe that's my last slide.
Perfect. You know, Chris, this was some great information, and Second Wind Fund is most certainly a strong mission, and we appreciate everything and the work that you guys do. So
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
thank you so much, Chris. Fundraising is a unique resource that we can use for our organization, and if maximized through social media, as Chris said, our networks, and through techniques like Chris shared with us today, our organizations can use these resources to maximize our efforts and fulfill our mission. So great resources here, Chris. Thank you all again for joining us today. As I stated earlier, a copy of today's webinar will be sent to you along with February's fundraising tips. If you have any questions for Chris or myself, our contact information is on the screen in front of you, as well as our upcoming webinar for March. As always, please share and like us on Facebook and LinkedIn. And you also can visit our website at stewardshiptechnology.com/blog for up-to-date information about resources that we provide at Stewardship, as well as our products, services, industry trends, and future webinars. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye now.